After a win like this, Tony, do you feel like has your expectations for the Kings changed at all due to a win like this, where you do have Sabonis fouling out in overtime, and you do have Shemezi Metu and Trey Lyles trying to pick up that slack and being able to overcome the adversity of a nearly fully healthy Clippers team? Does it change the expectations for you at all about how far the Kings could potentially make a playoff run?
Oh, 100%. Like when the Kings start winning a lot of games and I see we're like in the playoff hunt and like we're like 3 seed, 4 seed, 5 seed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, there's going to be a time where we're going to hit a slump. We're going to lose like 8 out of 10 games or something. And like, it's just classic Kings fashion. But now seeing us like win all these crazy games and scoring 176 points in a game and win by 1 point, like it's little things that like I'm like, okay, now my expectations for the Kings in the playoffs, I was like, oh my God, we're guaranteed 2 home playoff games in Sacramento. Even if we get swept, we're guaranteed 2 playoff games. Now I'm like, I better be seeing like second round playoff games. Like
Mm-hmm.
it could happen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a lot of good teams in the West. Like, I'm not John Morant. I'm going to be like, we're good in the West, you know?
Yeah.
But like the West is insanely stacked to like the point where like, I mean, an 8 seed could go all the way to the Western Conference
Yeah.
Finals.
So I've got two follow-up questions for you, Tony. So I think like I guess like the kind of buzz around Sacramento was like when and Josh and I have talked about on the pod last week is like, were we disappointed when the Kings did nothing at the trade deadline? I think pretty much the short answer is yes, like we were a little bit, but that's mostly because every team right on our heels, the Suns, the Mavericks, all these other teams, the Lakers, they all made moves to make them better and make that playoff push. And the Kings were like, hey, I'm going to like, we make the joke, sit back in our lazy boy chair and just like watch everything play out and like stick with our core. I think this is extremely reassuring that the core that we have right now can compete at the highest level in the Western Conference. And the 2 points to that are we beat the Mavericks, who had just gotten Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. We beat them at home, and now we go into LA on a back-to-back game, and we fucking torch the fucking Clippers, who had two superstars on the floor and Russell Westbrook in his debut, and we spoiled it.
Yeah, I mean that. Don't get me wrong. That win against the Mavs was so big,
Mm-hmm.
but then it played the Mavs when they just got Kyrie. That was his like what first game, second game? It was Luka's first game back from
It was
injury.
Kyrie's second game, but it was their first game together as a duo.
Yes. So there was that, and we won. And then this is the first game with Westbrook, and we won.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it could be very different where they win, they play more games together, they gel together, they get more chemistry, and then they're more dangerous in the playoffs. Because we have played both of those teams the first times playing with their new, stars. So there is that, but I still don't. I still don't care. I think the Kings, regardless, like Sabonis staying in, Sabonis fouling out. I love our bench.
Yeah.
Our bench is crazy.
Isn't that
Like,
wild to say that like we have a good bench? Like we have never had a good bench or a deep bench in general, and that's spearheaded by Malik Monk. It really does show that when we don't have him and he's out for 2 weeks for an ankle injury, we take a hit as a team. And that's like, and you never wish injuries upon any team. Like, of course not the Kings, but I mean like it just shows that like we can pick up the slack, we can face adversity and win these games, these tight-knit games when it really matters most. I don't know if you heard Josh on the podcast. He said something about Fox where he was like, hey, this is Fox's time to shine, where he knows that the last 25 games of the season, he really needs to make a statement. And he got his fifth or sixth straight 30-point game tonight. He had over 40. And I think that like Fox is spearheading the Snake as a team in general. I mean, like, is it wrong to say that Fox is the best player on the Kings? Like, he's been so fucking consistent, right? What do you say, Josh?
I think that's a good segue. I do want to ask both of you this question.
Sure.
Here we are with Fox, right? This is now his sixth game straight, scoring 30-plus points. Tonight he scores, I think, 42. I mean, obviously that is a franchise record for a player to score consecutively like that. Let me ask you this. I'm going to start with you, Chris. Do you feel like Fox has solidified himself as potentially the best Kings player of all time? And if not, what does he need to still do to pass that up? And then that'll go to Tony.
Yeah, man, that's a really tough question. I would say Fox you can make the. I don't know if I would say he's the best Kings player to ever grace the floor in Sacramento, but I would say he's definitely top 2 most important players the Kings have ever had.
Because we can say the top 3 right now are probably Fox, Oscar Robertson.
Well, if you're going Sacramento era, I would say it's Fox, Chris Webber, and probably DeMarcus Cousins. Those are like the 3. Yeah, those are like the 3 guys. I think DeMarcus Cousins is probably the most talented player that's ever played for the Kings, but I think De'Aaron Fox is probably the most well-rounded player that's probably played for the Kings, besides Chris Webber, because Chris Webber was so fucking talented.
Okay.
But I don't know if Tony would give a different answer.
All right, Tony, let's hear it.
I would say not right now, but I think he has a very good chance of being the best Kings player ever. I say he's obviously top 3,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like he could easily, if he's not, 2 or 3 right now, or even 1 or whatever, I think regardless of what happens this year, I think we obviously still make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if he wins a game or 2 in the playoffs, even if we win a series, I think he's literally neck and neck with either Chris Webber or Cousins or whatever. Because did Cousins ever? Obviously Cousins never made the playoffs with the Kings, actually, because it's 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
So because Chris Webber, they made the playoffs multiple times. They made Western Conference championships. So
yeah.
they went places. Obviously they didn't win a title, but they got very, very, very close. So I think Fox has to win some playoff games and maybe a series or 2. I think he's right there.
Yeah, I think you can also make the case for Sabonis too. I mean, Sabonis is probably one of the most talented, most level-headed IQ players the Kings have ever had on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from an outside perspective looking in, if you're not a Kings fan and you see De'Aaron Fox spearheading the Snake to the team that breaks the playoffs, whatever the playoff drought, then how do you not name him the best Kings player to ever play? Kind of thing, like he's the guy leading the team. So I think you can make the solid argument that he is that guy.
I think the other thing that you have to consider too is the fact that Fox has been raised by shit Kings teams and shit Kings coaches, except for maybe Malone. I don't know, whatever you'd consider. But he's been raised by a lot of adversity in his professional career, and the fact that he's able to do what he's doing in his first season with a solid head coach. I mean, none of us would have had this conversation about De'Aaron Fox at this time last year.
Yeah.
We were all talking about, how can we trade De'Aaron Fox and build a franchise around Tyrese Halliburton? I mean, that's really the conversation that was going on in Sacramento this time last year. Mm-hmm. And now here we are a year later, and we're talking about Fox maybe being the best Kings player of all time. That is a huge testament to Monty McNair and the foresight of their front office.
Fucking wild.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.